Hi there, David Hunter here from bloggerme.com, and this is my review of the second test between New Zealand and Wales. Unfortunately, the second test was not as enjoyable to watch from my point of view as the first test. Perhaps my expectations were a little bit too high, having enjoyed the first test so much. Now, New Zealand did make 7 changes to their starting lineup. I'm not necessarily sure that this made a massive difference because we all know New Zealand have such strength and depth and can afford to make these changes without necessarily weakening their side too much, if at all. Now, the Welsh made a very reasonable start, put New Zealand under a bit of pressure, but to be honest, they never really looked like scoring. It wasn't until New Zealand got the ball down the far end of the field whenever a score just looked inevitable. They put the Welsh under pressure, and of course were rewarded by a try after 24 minutes to Corey Jane. As the game went on, New Zealand, who were perhaps a little bit more scrappy in this game, were still looking to run it. And they didn't engage in any games of aerial tennis, which so many international fixtures descend into these days. So it kept me interested, kept me engaged watching the game, because New Zealand were trying things. And of course, the Welsh were not contesting the breakdown just as fiercely as they did in the first test, and were perhaps getting turned over a little bit too easily and not turning New Zealand over. Towards the end of the first half, we saw the start of a period of Welsh ill-discipline. Welsh fullback Byrne was sin-binned for lifting the Kiwi second row Donnelly above the horizontal, a dangerous tackle. And he's a professional rugby player. I mean, he should know the the laws of play. You can't do this. He should know from his own point of view it's dangerous. But what was even more surprising was his reaction when he was shown the yellow card. He looked absolutely astonished. I mean, there could be no question about it. Not even looking at the replay, but looking at it in real time, it was obviously a dangerous tackle. I thought it was a good refereeing decision because we need to stamp this out of the game before somebody gets their neck broken. The ill-discipline continued into the second half. Early on in the second half, Jonathan Thomas was penalised for making a tackle without using his arms. I mean, again, he's a professional rugby player. It's such a stupid thing to do, to go into a tackle without your arms. It's not that difficult. It is actually what rugby is all about. I mean, if you compare that to the New Zealand tackling, theirs was all hard and fair. I mean, there was a couple of big hits in the game. One of them was Richard Cahoon on Byrne. Again, a big tackle, but hard and fair. And another one was Dan Carter hitting Alan Wynne-Jones. An example of them playing hard and fair. But anyway, the ill-discipline continued early in the second half into sort of midway through the second half, where Wales seemed intent on just conceding penalties. Now, again, New Zealand were a little bit more scrappy, and their offloads and stuff weren't coming off just as well as they might have done in the first game. But certainly it almost appeared to be a Welsh tactic to concede penalties because losing 3 points was better than losing 5 or 7. And of course, to a certain extent, it probably kept them in the game because they did come alive in the last 10 minutes, although it took them 70 minutes really to waken up. Jamie Roberts, who for me was the Welsh man of the match, did manage to cross the line after a period of sustained pressure by Wales on New Zealand. However, he was held up by de Malmonch and Zach Gilford, and of course we all know Roberts is a big, strong lad, so well done New Zealand for holding him up there, because it just shows your resilience to not let anybody score against you. A couple of minutes later, again Wales were on the attack, and Jonathan Davies had a 3-on-2 and absolutely butchered it. And I mean, really, you have to take your chances against the Kiwis whenever you get them, because they don't give you too many. But luckily, a couple of minutes from the end, Wales were rewarded. Again, Jamie Roberts got on the end of a move in the corner. And I thought if anybody deserved to try for Wales, it was Jamie Roberts. Unfortunately, the shine was taken off the score a little bit because right at the death, Aaron Cruden, who was on for Dan Carter, put through a little grubber kick, which was misfielded by Byrne, and Cruden managed to cross the line to dot over. Disappointing from a Welsh point of view, but to be honest, I thought it was a fair result, given that New Zealand played more of the rugby, looked to run the ball, and looked to play more positively, not giving penalties away, and just generally playing better rugby. So all in all, perhaps a disappointing tour for Wales. Left them asking the same questions that the rest of the Northern Hemisphere are asking. Why do the Northern Hemisphere teams find it so difficult to compete with New Zealand? They seem to compete with Australia and South Africa much better than they do with New Zealand. However, Australia and South Africa consistently challenge New Zealand. In fact, although New Zealand are ranked number 1 in the world at the moment, South Africa are the ones that have won all their recent accolades, beating the Lions last year, winning the Tri-Nations. But again, it just comes back to this question of how can we, Northern Hemisphere teams, challenge the Kiwis, and it's a question that the Northern Hemisphere coaches are going to have to answer in this next year if they want to challenge them for the World Cup. But anyway, as I say, a little bit disappointed from this game overall as a neutral supporter. But anyway, looking forward to your comments on this one. Please join in the discussion. Thanks.